Hi, I'm Dean with Old English Outfitters, and today we're going to be talking about how we sharpen knives. Every hunter knows the value of a sharp blade. Whether you're cleaning birds or gutting deer, the value remains the same. A lot of people don't know that we offer sharpening as a service at Old English Outfitters. Our fees are very reasonable, and if you'd like to call about pricing, we're more than happy to quote you.
So for our sharpening, we use the Work Sharp by Ken Onion with the blade grinder attachment. This is a very nice device. It has adjustable belt speed trigger with a lock, so you can set the belt to rotate without having to constantly hold down that trigger like we talked about. As always with power tools, we're going to be using safety glasses just to protect our eyes. So we're going to start off here with the rough belt, as that is going to shape the geometry of our edge. Make sure we're cutting in a straight line. Here we're using just a small belt knife. It's reasonably thin on the back, so we're going to have our angle set between 15 and 20 degrees. Now with this rough belt, it's pretty aggressive, so we don't want to go in too fast. We're going to set that on a low speed before we start actually grinding on the knife. And then we can see here our alignment is set properly. Belt spinning straight, so here we go. And we're just touching right there on the beginning of the edge, being careful to keep the knife parallel to the ground and grind it all the way to the tip. Back and forth. You want to make sure you're doing the same number of strokes on each side of the edge. So I always go right, then left, right, then left. You get the idea. It gets kind of boring after a while, but if you want a good cutting edge, that's what you have to do. And like I said, this is an aggressive belt, so we're going to be shaping up the edge here. And then we're just going to check and make sure everything's staying aligned. When you're using rougher belts like this, you're going to see a little bit of a burr form. All that's going to look like is just a very small reflective line on the edge of the knife. This means that just a little bit of that metal is getting pushed over, and then each time you grind the opposite side, it gets pushed back over. This is actually going to be aligned in the very center of the edge, which is going to give us that really sharp blade that we want. It just takes a little while. Right now it looks rough because it's being ground with a rough belt. And everything still looks good here. Everything's shaped well, so we're going to turn that off, make sure our belt stops, set our knife down, and switch belts out. This was our rough shaping belt, so we are going to go down to a lighter shaping belt. It's not going to take up as much metal, but it'll make sure everything's straightened up on that edge and that there's no chips or burrs or anything like that still in line. So we got that belt set, same angle, and we can see here it's not fully aligned straight on the wheel, so we're going to adjust that and make sure it's rotating in the center of our guide here. There you can see it's centered. Alright, so we're going to pick the speed up a little bit, less aggressive belt, so we're going to do more speed. So it's theoretically taking away the same amount of metal without getting too aggressive. And then back to our process. Right side, then left side, right side, then left side. We're going to do this. We're just going to get that excess metal off so it's not getting caught by the belt and flinging back at us. And here we go. Cannot stress enough how important it is to keep the knife parallel to the ground. Especially with the belt. Now, if you're using whetstones, this is not as big of an issue because one swipe is not going to take away that much metal. But with a belt like this, it's taking away metal all the time at a very quick rate. So if you mess up your angle, you can mess up your knife very easily and either scratch the finish or make it a very dull blade and you'll have to start back from square one. Do that too many times and you'll start grinding away your blade and misshaping it. We don't want that. All we want to do is just bring that metal back into alignment, take off a little bit so that it is razor sharp. Just being very careful here. You can see me guiding it with my left thumb. It's very easy to take the tip off your knife with one of these grinders, so we're very careful when we do that, guiding it with the thumb and not pushing into the belt because you want to maintain that tip, especially if you're going to be piercing something like hide. And now that step is done, so we're going to take off this belt and put on an even finer belt. This is technically the sharpening belt. It's not quite to the polishing level, so it's still moving metal, but it is not nearly as aggressive as the last two we've used. So we'll line that up, make sure it's locked in place. Be very careful with that, making sure it's locked, because otherwise that belt will fling off. It's not really going to hurt you, but it can damage the belt, and you don't want to waste any money on those. That's looking like it's already rotating in line, so we're going to turn that speed up again. Yeah, that looks good right about there. Lock that trigger in place. and start again. Again, that excess metal, we'll just wipe that off real quick. Parallel to the ground. And as we get up in these lighter belts or less aggressive belts, we get to just be a little bit more free. So if there's a slight misshaping in the edge so it doesn't look perfectly straight, I can kind of change the angle with my hand. Don't try that if you're just starting off. I've been doing this quite a while, so I can tell if that's going to affect the way the knife cuts. And with a lighter belt like this, it's not really going to affect the grind of the edge. Not as much anyway, so I have a little bit of freedom to kind of fine-tune it, we'll say. Rotating all the way to the tip there again. This may look kind of boring. A lot of it is just repetition, because you need to be the exact same on that angle every time. So it takes a little bit longer than some people would think, even on a belt, but if you want that perfect cutting edge, you got to be perfect in your movement. Yeah. Just like that. And you can see here I'm inspecting the edge, excuse me, just to make sure that that burr is kind of lining itself up. It's not quite as visible anymore. That doesn't mean it's not there, but it has lined up with the edge of the knife. So I'm not seeing that light reflect off of it as it's pushed over. And that's even more in line now. We're starting to be able to feel that edge catch our skin, which is very good. Alright here, so now we're moving on to our last step on the grinder, which is a polishing belt or a fine belt. And this is just going to further straighten that edge. Again, this is not really taking off metal as the first two belts did, it's just moving it. So this is going to polish up that edge, gives it that nice reflective look so you can't see the grind lines in the edge. And you're going to want that if you want an edge that's really going to skin game well and hold up. So it also be noticed that this belt is a convexing belt, so the way that grinds your edge is it puts a little bit of an arc to it. I don't want to overcomplicate it. It really just makes it a stronger edge while still being very, very sharp. You can't get it quite as keen as a standard V-cut edge as it comes from the factory, but you can get it very sharp here. And here with this close-up, you can see perfectly in line with that belt parallel to the ground. And you can see I'm kind of missing the tip a little bit because my tip has been well formed and I don't want to get it too close to that belt there. So I'm moving very slow, guiding with my thumb, and then lifting off the belt. Here's a different angle here so you can see how that blade runs just along the edge. That's why we set the angle like that, so it's not messing with the finish of the knife. Just till I touch the tip. You really don't want to spend any time with that tip on the belt. As soon as you get it there, you lift. You gotta be careful. Don't swipe off the belt though. Lift straight up as you see I'm doing here. And that preserves that tip quite well. And there's just a little rough spot I want to polish out there. Give it a couple more good sweeps. Just like that. I like to spend a little bit more time on the polishing belts just because, like I said, it's not going to really take away any metal from the knife, so all you're doing is refining. There's not much. There is some if you're not careful, but there's not much that can go wrong here, as it is just a polishing belt. You still want to have a good grip on the knife so that that sander doesn't fling it back your way or anything, but it's not as much danger to the edge of the knife, as we'll say. And everything looks good here. And I'm testing to see, run it along the back of your nail there, you can see if there's any burrs, and this is a perfectly smooth edge right now. So I'm going to give it just a couple more passes just for good measure, as I'm a perfectionist, so I want to get that done real quick. Just like that. Finish it off where we started. Good. And everything looks good here. So we're going to turn off our belt and move on to a leather strop. Now this is just the back side of a piece of leather glued to a piece of wood. And this has, you can see one side is green here. That's the fine side. And the other has a slight gray tint to it. This has some diamond compound, which is just going to maybe make it a little bit more aggressive on the strop. So we don't have to spend as much time as we would on just like a raw piece of leather. So this here, we're just further shaping that edge, honing it up, making it very sharp. You can see I'm still being careful with my angle. You want to line up that angle just like you did if you want it to be effective, all the way to the tip. And this is just leather, so we don't have to worry at all about it misshaping the edge. It's just kind of moving things around, lining things up for us. And we're going to switch to the fine side. This is even less aggressive. This is just to polish. Take off any burrs or any any of those grind lines and give it that almost mirror finish on the edge of the knife. I don't like to do too close to mirror just because that can be too fine, and then you cut one thing with it and it's not as sharp anymore, especially when you're doing a game knife or anything like that. Couple more passes on this strop, and that's looking real nice, keen, we can feel. And like with all of our knives, we're going to do a paper test, and this way, found just so we're not putting any pressure on the knife, we're going to get into the table here, and that cuts through that paper just like butter. And just because I like cutting paper, we're going to do a couple more sweeps here. You can see this isn't catching at all. Running all the way to the tip on unsupported paper, that's a good indication of a very, very sharp knife.
Guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like what you saw here, please like, leave a comment, and subscribe. I'm Dean with Holding the Shop Fitters, and we'll see you next week.